A world of hate, a world of pain, a world too blind to see, a world of judgments, a world of sadness, a world void of truth. These are the lyrics to the song Close to a World Below by the Almighty, and I said Almighty, Immolation. And the reason why I'm showing you these lyrics is because I think it's going to tie closely to what this story is about. And what is this story? Well, look no further than what I'm about to show you. Recently, I discovered this playlist of videos that initially seemed as if someone, in this case Asheville Lane, had found some unused elements of Deltarune and was willing to share with the class their findings. And actually, the first video I saw was episode 16, and after I skimmed through some of the other episodes of the series, I finally decided to watch it front to back, and at this point I'm really glad that I did. And since I've seen no one else discover this series, at least to my knowledge, I would be glad to do the honors of introducing this unnamed series. And now, before we start, I will warn that I'm not going to go over every minute little detail in these episodes. And you might be asking, well, why? Well, the answer is that I'm lazy, but my actual reason is that I don't want to go over everything because I don't want to spoil everything that this series has to offer. So I recommend you watch the whole series in your own time so you can see all the details that I skipped over. So with all that being said, we're going to start at the very first episode, 01_unused prison room. The description for this episode says, I've been digging through Deltarune's files and I found a room that was supposed to be in Chapter 1. I'll let you know if I find something else. The first episode sees us in the castle dungeon from Chapter 1. After walking past the eyes in the cage, this is where the first anomaly occurs. In the normal game you cannot go left, but here Ash is able to go left and up to this red being of sorts trapped behind a gate. The being asks if the Fun Gang has brought them any food, to which Ash selects no. After complaining about their unfair treatment to the Fun Gang, there's text displayed which implies that this is an unfinished or even cut character from the game, as the being wonders when their dialogue tree will be finished. Talking to them for a third time, some dialogue I find important is said. You know, people like to tell me, these bars aren't here to keep you in, they're here to keep us out. Why can't it be both? Am I not a danger to other people? Don't they want me locked away? Then the being says, you're making me uncomfortable, please leave me alone. Now, take a note of this line, as it will appear again, and after this, the video ends. So already this series is beginning to present some oddities, and oddities that were, as the description puts it, supposed to be in the game. But why were these oddities removed? I'm not sure. Perhaps the answer will come later, but for now, our next episode, 02_unused Castletown's cutscene. The description for this episode simply says, still digging through the files. This is a weird one. Already the first oddity is shown, or rather heard, as the Castletown music is pitched down, which helps create more of a sense of unease at what's to come. After learning of Rousey's cooking song, which is something you would absolutely do in the real game, Ashton walks past all the rooms and comes to the closed-off door. Normally one would not be able to enter, but the prompt to enter does appear. After selecting yes, Chris and Susie go inside. Now in the normal game, this is where Queen and Tenna's room would be, but here, instead, we're met with a giant hole. The music has now been replaced with ominous sounds. When Chris walks up to the hole, the dialogue says, there is a hole at the center of your mind. It is a vastness that is too great for you to consider. If you fell in, rather than dying on impact, you would most likely suffocate first. There are unpleasant voices rising from the bottom, echoing off the stone walls for what could have been thousands of years. They remind you of pain. They remind you of the emptiness. They remind you of him. Soon enough, Rousey comes to the rescue and yells at the Lightners to leave the room immediately. After leaving, Rousey says how dangerous the room is, but he doesn't elaborate any further. And after some rope ethics discussion, crazy to say, the video ends. Now at this point, even more oddities are making themselves known, especially with this giant gaping hole, which reminds me of House of Leaves, a book that will come to our attention later. And before Rousey interrupted, it seemed as if the dialogue was going to say, they remind you of him, but who could this him be? Well, still, we do not know. Now, unlike Half-Life, we're going to go on to episode 3, 03_misplaced text chains. For episode 3, the description reads, so what I think happened here is that dialogue from a different map was accidentally placed in this early version of the classroom. Here our episode now takes place in the light world, more specifically in the classroom. Now this episode's oddity is the fact that whenever Ash selects one of Chris's classmates, it shows Noelle's dialogue, seeming as if she's speaking through everyone. But as the description implies, it can be inferred that it's just a programming error. Noelle's dialogue focuses a lot on looking at jewelry. It even starts to talk about how her dad, Rudy, would take us, presumably her and her missing sister, December, to town to try to find the craziest piece of jewelry to get for their mom. Although she would never wear any of this jewelry that they got for her. Also, side note, the German word for jewelry is schmuck, which is just like the stupidest word ever. Even selecting the clock and computer brings out more of Noelle's dialogue. Although what's interesting is that after talking to the clock seemingly moves ahead by a minute or two. And since we are dealing with Noelle, she just has to mention Susie and thinks about what to get her. With Ash selecting, that would be a terrible idea. Because, Susie would absolutely eat any jewelry, and really anything at this point, so. After talking to the other Noelle mates, once Chris is at the desk, Noelle's dialogue box keeps popping up with the text, "It's beautiful," being repeated 3 times. Noelle then asks to play pretend, but with what exactly is unclear. And after Chris mean mugs the camera, the video ends. To me, I feel like this video is supposed to give the intention that with what Ash is finding is definitely far from normal. And I find the text at the end pretty interesting as well, with Noelle saying it's beautiful and her wanting to play pretend. Now, I do have a hunch about this, but that will come later. Now, on to part 4, 04_diner unused cutscene. Here the description simply reads, "I wonder why this is removed." Now, as the title implies, the setting is still the light world, but this time in the diner. And with the dialogue of Caddy, it seems as if this was a removed cutscene featuring just Chris and Caddy. Here Caddy talks about Susie, asking Chris if they think that Susie would actually help with the project. And honestly, I don't think anyone's doing the project, except for Noelle, of course. She's going to do it. Now with this, Ash selects the "we'll work together" option, to which Caddy responds with, "Whatever." It's really accurate dialogue. After some brief, uncomfortable silence, Caddy's break ends. Now what is interesting here about this video is that at the end, we see an option to call Susie, which is not possible in the real game. Other than that detail, I really can't get anything else from this video, but those 2 words that briefly appear at the end do definitely stand out a lot. So with that, we now scurry on down the hall to episode 5, 05_Susie phone dialogue. The description reads, "I keep finding stuff the more I keep looking. Why hasn't anyone else posted this stuff?" Before the video even starts, we first see Chris standing in a classic void before the school halls load in. Here we get the experience what calling Susie would be like. "Look, I know I just gave you my phone number, but could you at least wait until I'm out of the building to call me? Bye." Susie has declined your call. It seems that she gets annoyed with you constantly hitting up her digits, which I would be too, honestly. Then for the first time in the series, it cuts to black. Now we're in a different location, this being the Library. Calling Susie from here says, I was recently banned from the library. I had a few too many unregistered overdue books. But last weekend, I graciously decided to return them. Directly into their faces. No one told me I had to talk to the librarian before borrowing the books. They should really put a list of rules up there, so I know which ones to ignore. After this, we cut to black again, and now we are in Asgore's room in the flower shop. Calling Susie from here reads, "Oh, you're at your dad's place? Wait, your dad lives in his flower shop? So that's why I saw him pulling sausages out of the cash register." One time I took a big bite out of one of his flowers. He didn't even yell at me or try to throw me out, just politely asked me to stop doing that. I felt so embarrassed, haven't been back there since. I can see where you got your big softy side from, huh? Another cut. Now we are at the lake shore. Here the phone dialogue becomes pretty interesting. Susie loves the ocean. She thinks it's cool. She thinks there are sea monsters in the ocean. Finished dialogue later. It seems as though there is a more unfinished content in the game, much like the dialogue of the red being in the first episode. But now the phone dialogue becomes, well, in the words of WD-40 GLACIER, very, very interesting. Is she wrong? Are there monsters within the roiling fields of blue? You hate this place, don't you? It's not even a beach, it's a lake. You wish the tide would just swallow this place whole, so you'd never have to look at it again. could be sea monsters out there. If you want. Do you want to check? Then, spookily enough, Chris begins to walk out onto the water, much like the biblical figure of that masked magician who revealed magic's biggest secrets. Who remembers watching that shit, bro? I watched that shit all the time back then. Now, personally, I feel like episode 5 is where things are really starting to take a Snowgrave, weird direction. Susie phone dialogue is in character at first, but at the end with this random questioning, especially about sea monsters, it's definitely odd. That and Chris strolling out onto the lake. So now, if you look down at your feet, you can see that we are now heading our way to episode 6, 06_test room. This description reads, I think this room would have been in the Scarlet Forest, but I'm not sure honestly. This episode sees Chris in a black void, the only things accompanying them being 4 X's and a sign warning of the Harvey twins. The X's warn Chris about how tough as nails they are. Nothing too out of the blue for Deltarune. After talking to the X's, Chris walks off. But just before this short video ends, we see the shadow of the light world version of Chris step in the frame, just in front of the sign. With this, the video ends. Now, other than the last scene of the video, I can't also get much from this upload, but I think this upload will play a bigger part in what I think the overall story of this Unfiction is. But I'll explain that later. Now we're on to our next stop, Sebin, 07_Cyberfield TV room. Here the description reads, I guess they moved the set piece to the end of the chapter. Now we see the fun gang at the beginning of chapter 2, and already one can hear the slight pitch down of the level music. After walking down an inconspicuous direction, the Lancer fan club stumbles across a familiar CRT. Although not too familiar, as this series was made last year in 2024. Selecting the TV shows a variety of channels, nothing too out of the ordinary. There's even a horse commercial, which is like, holy shit. However, there is a channel that once selected, the music begins to fade out, with the channel showing the following. You see 2 kids playing by a lake bed. They appear to be arguing with each other. One storms off and leaves. Forever. The other kid stares into the sunset. No one is there for them. You turn off the TV. After this rather bleak description, the video ends. Although it may not seem like it, the scene described will come back, and it is a preview to a much more important scene later on. But we'll get there when we get there. Oh crap, what's that? Oh, that's right, episode 8, 08_unused boat scene. Description: a very early version of the boat cutscene in chapter 2. As the title and description implies, we see Chris and Ralsei in an alternate version of the acid tunnel from chapter 2. After getting on the boat, we not only hear odd piano music that's not even in the game, but we get to see the best sprite seen so far, that being of the sitting Ralsei, but this time he's hatless. Hey, you love to see it, baby. And yes, I actually wrote that in my script. As the two of them ride down the river, Ralsei recounts some events from chapter 1, and is glad to have a moment alone with Chris. After asking Chris what to talk about, there's 4 options present. Lancer, Noelle, Ralsei, and the option to keep going. However, the option to select Ralsei is skipped, which is sad but odd. As the boat travels on, Ralsei then begins to discuss what he would have done if Susie and Chris did not show up on that one fateful day, talking about checking the edge of town every day, and every 2 days, until once a week, and every 2 weeks, then monthly. Already a sense of desperation, so another in-character moment for him. After getting off the ride, Chris aura farms to the camera, and then the video ends. Now this upload is another one that's really starting to build up the tension, and I think the biggest moment is the skipping of asking Ralsei about himself. And again, I think this does tie into the overall story, but just, damn, wait a bit, I'll get to it. Well, time for part 9, 09_more Susie phone dialogue. Description: I tried to see if the call Susie prompt would work in other locations. Our video sees Chris return to the light world, starting in the Librarby, and after calling Susie, we're met with what seems to be a voice message. After this, we now see ourselves in Town Hall, with the phone message being the same as last time. Wie komisch. Our next location is an opening in the forest, which is a location not present in the real game. Yet again, we're left with the voice message. Like, damn girl, pick up the fucking phone, damn! With this, we are now in the cemetery. What's interesting here is that the call home option is seemingly selected on accident, but also strangely, doesn't work. After ringing Susie up, she remembers that she has a phone and finally answers, saying, Yo, dude, totally need to come back here at night. There's a guy who comes by every so often and leaves out a whole bag of chocolate coins. Susie, I don't think those coins are for you. Dead people can't eat chocolate. Unless they were zombies. Susie! They're coming to get you, Noelle. Hey, cut it out. Interesting how Noelle is there with Susie, huh? After this, the video ends. But hold up! For a frame, we see Chris standing on the lake. A callback to the end of episode 5. With the anomaly of the forest clearing, Susie only answering at the cemetery, and the frame of Chris standing on the water, yet again, this series is just leaving us with questions and jack diddly for answers. All we can do now is jump on up and grab a hold of episode 10, 10_lake. For the description, Ash plainly asks, why am I the first to see this? Now, after walking past the slimed out Shay, Chris makes their way back to the lake, only to see Ralsei. Now, not only is Ralsei in the light world, but he's in his best form. Here, Ralsei asks Chris if they would like to go for a walk, with Chris answering in character by just walking right out into the lake, just like in episode 5. And here's where the series starts to get just plain old weird. The background changes to a gloomy gray waters, with a text box reading out stats for an unknown entity that reeks of putrefaction. Teamwork. Ralsei begins to talk to Chris, saying, "Hey Chris, where are you going?" You seem to be heading pretty far out there, buddy. Water can get really choppy the further from land you are. Water can get really choppy the further from land you are. Despite the warning, Chris keeps walking ahead, with Ralsei saying, "What? How are you able to do this? Why not? It's not exactly the most extraordinary thing to happen to you. Where do you draw the line between fantasy and reality? Where can you? Do you even want to?" After the screen shakes with text describing a massive rumbling beneath the surface, Ralsei resumes, saying, "Do you know how to swim? Just in case. Perhaps this is temporary? Wearing down the fabric of linen by pressing too hard upon it? Overuse, creating holes? Also, I wouldn't want you to drown." Even in these odd times, Ralsei is still kind to Chris. How quaint. After another rumble, there is text that describes a trumpeting cry that echoes from deep below. Are you enjoying this? It is quite scenic. Are you ever going to answer my hypotheticals? Or am I just going to keep talking to myself here? Honestly, my favorite line. I love how despite the creepiness, there's still some humor present, which is honestly a strength of this series. Suddenly things become slightly darker, with Ralsei quipping, "Very funny. Tell me when you found the other side, okay?" After another rumble, the text says, "The steely gray waters belie a terrifying greatness. And yet it appears to you shaped as an equal. But still, its presence consumes the skyline. People are not..." Then the video ends. To me, the thing that stands out the most, despite the ominous lamination of the rumbling waters, is when Ralsei asks Chris, "Where do you draw the line between fantasy and reality?" Now write this line down in your native tongue, as it will be another very important detail later on. Now, as I said before, I do believe that this is where the story begins to turn and the foundations begin to crack. Better go get some sealant, because now we're heading on over to episode 11. 11_school early. Here the description oddly says, "I'm not sure if this is an early version of the school, or if you're ahead of schedule." Now what could you possibly mean by that, Ash? As the title implies, we see Chris in an alternate version of the school halls as they try to open a locked door, but to no avail. And after fiddling around, Chris walks up to the second bulletin board. But what it says is rather shocking. There is a brightly colored notice pinned on the board. "Sad news! Miss Toriel is moving away at the end of the week, which means this Friday will be her last day here. Be sure to tell her what a wonderful teacher she's been for all these years." What? What? After this devastating news, Chris tries to enter the next room and, shockingly, it too is locked. However, there's text stating that Chris does not want to enter the room, which is sadly fitting as it would lead to Toriel's classroom. Eventually we see Chris back in the abandoned classroom from chapter 1. When Chris opens the cabinet, this is what happens as the music begins to fade out. You open the cupboard a crack. Even in the darkness, you spot strange items on the shelves. A pile of burnt twigs, a blue quill, a small animal bone, a water-damaged page ripped from a book, a paper fortune teller but lined with runes rather than letters, a shard of petrified wood, and a large, jagged, rotten tooth. The items almost seem ritualistic in nature. However, there is one more item that you almost missed. It's a small piece of molted skin. Despite the darkness, you can tell that it is a pale purple. There are numbers written all across in black marker. You record the numbers into your phone. Strange. After this macabre description of the cabinet materials, the options to call appear, but seemingly do not work. And with this, Chris walks to the left and goes out the other door. Now, if the foundation was cracking before, it's really starting to shatter. The items of the cabinet sound familiar to you? Well, they do. Take note once again, as they will return. And the news of Toriel leaving is also surprising. Like, why would she leave in the first place? And is Chris coming with? Well, let's hope so, because the next upload is probably the strangest one. That's right. Pick it on up. It's episode 12. 12_ Papyrus House. The description says, I guess we're going to meet him in later chapters. Referring to Papyrus, which at this point better be true. Already this episode stands out so much just because of how starkly different it is. We are in an Undertale location for starters, this one being Sans and Papyrus' house. The music is off too, as there's seemingly several instruments missing from the track. As Chris walks around the house, the descriptive text is anything but, as it is short and to the point, but seems desperate to not have the TV be on, perhaps creating a link to episode 7. But talking to Papyrus, all he says is, Papyrus loves you. I like the part where Papyrus' door says, read the sign. Moron. Oddly enough, when looking at the picture of the bone, the text describes it as corpse. Rather grim. And if the episode couldn't get any grimmer, we see a rule sheet for the door, written by none other than that rat bastard rules card. When trying to use the door, it says, not this one, and another oddity present. After checking up on Papyrus again, Chris mean mugs the camera, this time reasonably, and the video ends. Other than the corpse description, I also can't get anything out of this video, but I do believe its strange out of placeness does play a purpose into the overall story. But for now, we're going to move floors up to episode 13. 13_ Shop. Here the description reads, It's so beautiful, a reference to the line Noelle repeated back in episode 3. We are now back in the chapter 2 Dark World, this time in the city. As Chris enters, we see a very crudely drawn shop, as the crappily written text on the left reads, we're in a jewelry shop. Here, when anything is selected, strings of text appear stating how the dialogue is seemingly missing. Where could it be? Well, do you remember episode 3? You left it there, Tony, you better go on and get it. However, there's a text for a note, but for some reason Chris doesn't want to read it. There's also dialogue for the large jewelry, with the text reading, it's a brooch. It's big and very beautiful. It would be a delightful present, especially for her. She's done so much for you. She took you in as her own. She deserves 1,000 brooches. But even if you had the money for them, you wouldn't be able to give them to her. Why? Because you don't know where she is. With this sad realization, Chris is left in the black void. After turning around again, the video ends. So with this episode, we realized that the dialogue back in episode 3 was actually for this unfinished jewelry shop in Cyber City. And the interesting thing is that the dialogue about the brooch, especially with how Chris says it would be a great gift for capital H her. And who is her exactly, and why is her location unknown? Now, some of you may be thinking of December, but who her is will be realized eventually. So just take hold of that. But now we're going to walk through the door and enter episode 14. 14_ early intro cutscene. Description. According to the metadata, this was made right after chapter 1 was released. Here we see Chris and the letter X in the bedroom, where the X says, Chapter 2 open, Kidsune Textbooks 1. After saying this, the X departs the room and Chris departs their bed. Here the descriptive text is pretty bleak, describing the bed sheets as being moth-eaten, the power being out, the radiator broken, and the window smashed. When selecting Asriel's bed, the text reads, You tried to love them. Both of them. And walking up to the window reads, The house will be gone soon. You can't stay like this forever. Find a way out. Here the video ends after Chris leaves the room, and if it didn't seem it before, now the series is kind of starting to get sad and bleak. The window dialogue is the one that you should keep an eye on, especially the text describing how the house will be gone, and how Chris can't stay like this forever. Now we move on to one of my favorite episodes of the series, that being 15_ Doorway. This is one of the best descriptions yet. It simply reads, I don't know what this means. Me neither, Haas, me neither. Here we see the fun gang in Queen's Mansion from Chapter 2. An NPC grimly tells the gang how all the butlers are trapped in the cafe and that Queen is missing. After selecting on the traveling door, Ash is somehow able to switch between the trash zone and the mansion options at 15 million miles a minute, and shockingly, in the very tippy top right corner we can see the soul on a secret 4th option. Selecting it leads to what I consider the most visually stunning part of the series. Chris enters this area alone, while multiple colored shapes form in and out. The text box reads, The colors coil and writhe, creating recognizable shapes for fleeting moments before they fade into their churning hue. A fog of sunset Eternia. Moving onwards, the next text box reads, "As it roars, the sound emanates from inside your head, toiling like a tower bell at midday, floating outwards to join the nightmare choir of unearthly noise and song. Its presence consumes the skyline. Most people are not prone to animosity when confronted with an animal lesser than them. In fact, the initial reaction is one of benevolence and assistance. A bird flies into a house, and we gently nudge it back into its proper environment. An abandoned cat begs for food, and it is given a scrap to last the morning. We imprint on animals and offer shelter until their expiration. Help will come when asked." Eventually, Chris stops moving and the menu is selected. Oddly enough, the phone options only read call. Here we get to see dialogue that will sound familiar. "Leave me alone. You keep following me around all day. It's weird. You're so weird. Do you even know how to talk to people? Stop crying. You've been bothering me all day. I'm not dealing with this. Why can't you make friends with someone else? I don't want to play with you. Please leave me alone. You're making me uncomfortable. And stop telling people that you're my brother." After the click, the text continues saying, "You can't go back to where you came. Not this far in. Do you want to go home?" After selecting yes, Chris is simply told to keep walking, and eventually goes to a door. "Please leave me alone. You're making me uncomfortable." Do you remember this dialogue? It appeared all the way back in the very first episode as said by the red being. Now we know where the dialogue comes from, but we still aren't sure of who said it exactly and to whom. There's a lot more here in this video, especially with the help is given when asked section, but I'll save it for later. Shocking, I know, I'm saving something for later. Overall, the best video visually so far, but I promise you, the series does get better. Now we travel on to the episode that I first discovered and the one that inspired me to make this analysis in the first place. We move on to episode 16. 16_Roaring Town. Here we get another great description with it reading, "Nothing's making sense." This doesn't apply to me as I've seen the series before, so... This episode is the second longest in this series, clocking in at 9.5 minutes, so I'll try to discuss the parts that I feel most important. Now we return to the town, however things are very different. We even see Chris in front of the bunker. Once Chris reaches town, we hear somehow a creepier version of man.ogg, which is the music that plays when you get the egg from the mysterious Eggman, who is not a doctor. Walking up to the church, we see smashed stained glass, and Alvin seemingly talks about how colorful the sky is, and how the angel is returning. After some strange dialogue from the various citizens turned denizens, Chris then talks to Alphys, who creepily says, "Chris, you don't need to come to school today. There was something spreading around the kids. I think it came from the water fountains. They couldn't be allowed to leave, but they were crying so much. I didn't know what to do, so I boarded up every door and window, but they kept poking their little fingers through. I didn't know what to do, so I smashed each one of them until I heard they clawed at the window, slamming their fists against the hardwood, kicking and screaming, but they're too weak to break anything. They are not allowed to get out. I heard them calling to their parents, asking for grown-ups to save them. But I'm a real girl. I know what I'm doing. They should just sit still. They should just sit still there and wait until... Sorry, Chris. What were you saying?" Even for Alphys, what she said was pretty disturbing. It seems as if the roaring is making everyone act incredibly off. Talking to the nurse at the hospital, she also disturbingly tells Chris, "The hospital is closed. I've had enough of this. Of living things dug in the bone marrow. The face is erupting the dark red hives that excrete a toothpick-like pus and treating burns that reduce the entire body to moaning scar tissue. It's sickening. I hate my job. If you hurt yourself, grow up, baby." That second section of dialogue also got to me. It's still good to see the humor present in the series. Interestingly enough, the text on the hospital is faded, except for the letters that spell pit. Now, where have we seen a pit before? Now we move on to Undyne, who upholds the law and tradition of telling Chris fucked up things. Telling them, "Feet pound, run, blood pumping, saliva frosted the corners of the mouth, teeth sharp, claws sharp, pain strikes your feet as it slams upon barbed wire thorns, stinging flesh tears, turn beds and wounds, feet pounds blood. The chase never ends. I can't sleep. Now, if you've read House of Leaves before, what she says here should sound pretty familiar. Funnily enough, Sansa's house is just clean gone, and as many mentioned in the comments, it seems as if he and Papyrus just packed up and ran the hell out of there. Once Chris makes her way into the alley, we notice something. First, the graffiti says "Fear," and in the trash can below it seeps a dark red liquid of sorts. We also notice the TV, which says, "An increase in violence has erupted nationwide. We recommend that everyone shelter in place until the crisis is past. Stay where you are. We will find you." A rather ominous threat. Once Chris reaches Caddy's dad, he tells Chris something strange. "Let me tell you about the first game ever. In the year 8000 BCE, a herd of prehistoric humans found an ancient cave. Inside the cave was a tall, thin monster cloaked in shadow. Every time a human took a step towards the cave, the monster would reach its sharp claws and break one of their bones, cleaning its hands. But when they tried to walk away, the monster would bite chunks off meat from the person's back until everyone stopped. They all screamed, 'Why?' They screamed, 'Why are you doing this to us?' The monster replied, 'We are playing a wonderful game, are we not? But you are breaking the rules, so penalties must be exchanged.' The herd was never seen, nor heard, nor known of ever again." Games are wonderful things. Beautiful imaginary lines and rules that become our whole world through fleeting moments. But if you step over the lines, then the game is over. Not just for you, but for everyone. It seems as if the roaring is making people tell grim, bizarre tales for whatever reason. But the line about games being beautiful imaginary lines that become our whole worlds for fleeting moments is one that stands out from what everyone else has said so far. Now Chris makes her way to Noelle, who says, "Oh, hey Chris. Mom locked me out of the house. She says that she's scared of me. But it's okay, I've been sleeping on the cold concrete sidewalk, eating small ants, flies, grasshopper, moths, cicadas. My teeth have rotted away in my mouth. They hurt. All the time. I drink the water from the lake and it makes my stomach writhe as if we're alive and trying to escape my body through my throat. The flesh has been twisted into a form of pure overarching agony that I'm trapped inside until further notice. You should go home, Chris. Your family is waiting for you." Honestly, the most in-character dialogue that this Unfiction has shown thus far. However, once Chris makes her way to their house, it's gone. Clean gone. Even the music packed up and left. After stumbling around the lot, the video ends. Now, this is definitely the most loaded video so far, and we really get a sense of how Foundation is just gone at this point, as nothing as it seems anymore in this town. What with the dreary UK look of everything, and the morbid dialogue of the residents, and the gleaming fact that Chris's house is just non-existent. But now we enter room 17. Oh shit, wait. Episode 17. 17 _ even more Susie phone dialogue. Description. She sounds really scared. Shit, I don't blame her. Here we see Chris back in the strange forest clearing. Same one that we saw in episode 9. This time featuring the famous fog from that one album that you guys don't know, but I do. There are several calling options, with the first being for home. But as the second option is selected, the word home vanishes. Seems familiar. Here Susie says, "Chris, I feel so cold. So empty. It's like something inside me that's always been there, that I've never noticed, is now missing. And I keep having these flashes, visions. A house, a note, a bedroom, the lake. When I try to relax, those images just keep appearing in my head. It's like I can't even control my own thoughts. I try to think them away, try to remind myself of who I am, but it's getting harder and harder. And I'm just so tired. Chris, I'm scared." Oddly enough, without even selecting the call again, more dialogue appears, saying, "That's enough. Stagnation leads to entropy and decay. Seek truth. And awaken from this terrible dream." As Susie says this warning, the fog and sound effects stop, almost as if the game itself has been confronted with the warning and now stopped dead in its tracks. I believe that this is where Chris's personal foundations begin to crack, as Susie's warning Chris to seek truth and awaken from this terrible dream. Is there something being implied that I, or maybe even you, are thinking? Potentially. But for now, let us commence forth to episode 18. 18_bedroom. This is the longest description yet. It reads, "Now we find Chris in the living room. Seems their home is returned. It's uncomfortably silent as Chris walks to the stairs. Going into their room, we see an alternate version of what the bedroom normally looks like, and we see that damn letter X standing next to Azriel's bed. Weird unsettling music plays as the unknown X plainly tells Chris that their bed is on the right. As Ash tries to interact with the various objects in the room, the X tells Chris not to touch their stuff, and acts in a very awkward, first-time college roommate encounter sort of way. After questioning Chris on their odd behavior, there's a knock at the door, to which the X, Chris, and music depart. As Chris walks down the hallway, they make their way down the hallway, eventually reaching a mirror. Creepily enough, and in a weird voice, the text says, "Meet." In 2 minutes, many details have been given, and as usual, the oddities continue. I think it's safe to say that the X featured in this video is Azrael, but as to why he's an X will be explained. The hallway is interesting too, as you know, oh shit, what's down there? Oh, why it's episode 19, 19_ my house unused. The description here is also lengthy, saying, my house. Sounds familiar, don't it? We start the episode right where 18 left off, in the 5-minute hallway. As Chris makes their way down the hall, they walk right past the stairs and continue down. After passing a second set of stairs, Chris walks through a door and is back in the hall. Chris walks into a room, but hold the damn phone. Why is the Snowden shot from Undertale here? With the text present, it makes sense as to why the description says what it says. After leaving and making their way to the room, we see a very interesting scene. It's the bedroom from the previous episode, but gradually shown on the right is the bedroom from the game, as we can see the rug in its actual place and Chris in bed. But Chris is already out walking about. Man, this series just can't help but be weird. That's one of the reasons why I love it so much. Returning to the mirror in the hall, the text reads, not this one, and the reflection stays, then fades into obscurity as Chris walks away. Really a house of horrors, huh? Finally going down the stairs leads Chris to an even weirder dark hallway in the void, which, as it turns out, are the 43-mile-long stairs that lead back down to the house. It's almost like one would have to set an expedition just to go up and down these stairs. Here the house has changed. As Chris walks through, we can notice how the dining room set is gone, the phone hangs off the receiver, the couch is gone, and most worrying of all, Cheriel is missing. Oh, front door is gone too. Going to the bathroom, Chris goes to the bathroom. Going to the bathroom, Chris goes to the bathroom. Here, Chris makes their way to the bathroom and leaves to go to the upside down show that is now their hallway. Going the cardinal direction down the stairs, Chris is seemingly back in the house, but there's a big ass Berlin style wall blocking most of the house. Wait, hold on, did I say wall? I meant big Berlin style massive fucking step up to the rest of the house. Heading back into the distorted hallway, Chris makes their way to Toriel's room. Here, one of the most important scenes plays out in the entire series. As Chris walks around, they find a letter, and that letter says, to Chris's next foster parent. I knew that taking in foster kids would be more than a simple responsibility, but Chris is a lovely child. They are creative, imaginative, and a joy to be around. Although, they do seem to have trouble connecting with kids their age, especially with my son. But they are eager for friends, even with a smaller group than other kids. I write to you, whomever you may be, because I believe Chris will have some trouble adjusting to their new home. They don't seem to like change, and with our family moving away so suddenly, it will certainly be a challenge for them. They seem to really connect with me as a parent, and I hope they have it in them to do the same with you. I hope you make an excellent home for our Chris. From Toriel Dreamer. Walking out of the room, Chris goes back to the mirror, where it says, there is one last thing to do. Remove the delusion. Pull it out by the roots. Take strength and truth. Walking back downstairs, the house almost seems normal. However, outside through the windows, we can see the same colorful backdrop that was featured back in episode 15. But scariest of all, Cheriel is still absent. With this, Chris walks out of the house. But for the last few frames, we notice that not only is the house gone, but Chris is in their Dark World outfit. Here, the video ends. Now, despite being 4 minutes, this is one of, if not the most lore-filled videos in this series so far, and this episode pretty much serves as a basis for what I believe the whole series is about. This episode also reminds me of House of Leaves, as I've said before, the many oddities of this house and just how it changes and distorts so much. But now we are approaching the end, and our next episode is the longest yet, clocking in at 11.5 minutes. We now reach episode 20, 20_ Unused Revelation. Here the description reads, Climax. Well, I think so too. Like stated previously, this is the longest episode, so I'll try to show the relevant information and leave the rest out for you to enjoy in your own time. We start with Chris, still in their Dark World appearance, but at the school. Going into the Chapter 1 classroom, we see Chris go through the door where episode 11 ended, but this time we see where that door leads. As a distorted version of Castletown music plays, we see Chris make their way into the castle. Here we return to that infamous hole seen back in episode 2. Here the text reads, there is a hole at the center of your mind. It is a vastness that is too great for you to consider. Even with conviction, the body reels at the thought of dissension. You steel yourself. Fall? After selecting yes, we see Chris fall from grace into the hole. Now what's in the hole? Why, it appears to be a dark world made by Vibing Leaf. Now, I'm not complaining though, this section looks great and you can tell there's been a lot of effort put into its appearance. Kudos. Walking through this hellscape, as the old dusty-ass vinyl record is playing, Chris talks to these weird red things, which are seen in Chapter 1 of the game, but they're a different color. The first one says, everyone had left them. Though they knew it was not out of hate or malice, the cold emptiness in their heart provided no comfort. On those cold December nights, they dreamed. A beautiful dream of knives and cartilage. The second one reads, the detachment which had once been a defense against the world was now their self-appointed prisoner. Their abandonment had inculcated walls of wet gray mud. As the crushing loneliness finally sapped the joy from their heart, they found solace in delusion and madness. To a desperate child, anything can become a toy for play. The third one speaks. In the forsaken house, a common homunculus furnatus molted its skin. They found it and fashioned it into a companion, an abrasive young ally, a kind thing who would bite and rip and claw and slash and tear and burn. It felt so good to be wanted, protected. The fourth communicates. A pile of twigs was collected over 20 days. It took them 20 more days to assemble it into the perfect friend. Radiant, kind, lovely, and willing to do anything for them. And she will. The fifth utters, a blue feather, cat hairs, a collection of toenails, dead skin from a rash. They created so many friends, but they all were made with the horrible emptiness. They could never love like they loved, not without intervention. The sixth rings out. They called into the lake, into that hated place. Most people are not prone to animosity when confronted with an animal lesser than them. In fact, the initial reaction is one of benevolence and assistance. What assistance they gave, and what a world they made. The seventh mentions, but pieces kept rotting off it like petals in the wind. Despite the seemingly vast power of the thing that holds the world, minds would boil inside heads, lands and houses putrefy in the sickly mulch. It was so wonderful. It was so horrible. It was joy. It was agony. But a corpse should be left well alone. Chris makes her way down a path, with the background flashing this image in and out. It seems to be a human silhouette of sorts, reaching up with one eye glowing bright, but I can't really make out what it is. Eventually, Chris walks their way through some trees, and the most important scene of the series plays. Here's what happens. Leave me alone! You keep following me around all day. It's weird. You're so weird. Do you even know how to talk to people? Stop crying. You've been bothering me all day. I'm not dealing with this. Why can't you make friends with someone else? I don't want to play with you. Please leave me alone. You're making me uncomfortable. And stop telling people that you're my brother. Not only is the text familiar, but so is the overall scene. Remember what was playing on that TV back in episode 7? After this scene, the other Chris melts down in an amalgamate style and says to Chris, "What were you expecting? The nature of time demands that all things decay, and now you found a hole poked into the corpse skin of your world, crawling your way directly to the heart. This was a gift. What more do you want?" Ah, you challenge an ulcer and believe it to be the whole body. Your entropy is forfeit to me. With this, we now see the first and only battle of the series. As that rat bastard JC appears, the text reads, "The Lie of the Land." The enemy is called the Blooming Waste. Sounds like a secret menu item at Outback Steakhouse. But when checking it, it is instead referred to as Utgaro Loki, who, as this commenter points out, was an illusion caster who tricked the gods Thor and Loki into making them think that he was this unbeatable monster. Sounds all too familiar, don't it? I'll skip over the bullet pattern segments, as that's a detail that I think you should experience in your own time. but they do stand out a lot. Selecting the enemy again is now referred to as Weeping Scar Tissue, and the next name is the Final Falsehood. Chris attempts to spare the veil, but its name is seemingly unknowable, which makes sense because the name keeps changing all the time. Eventually we reach a Goner Maker-esque section of the fight where the text reads, "It coils its veins around your heart and stares into your soul." After this, there's a familiar flavor text that talks about how penalties must be exchanged for breaking the rules, much like that story told by Caddy's dad back in episode 16. Perhaps this is the same beast that attacked those prehistoric humans all that time ago? After sparing for a fourth time, the enemy says, "Mercy? You wish to grant me mercy?" Human, you delight me so. With this, the battle is over. The being now says, "A termite refusing to bite a lion. Not out of fear, but because you wish not to cause harm, no matter how small. Is that why you chose to forsake your new world?" Human, I have much to ponder upon. My gaze will turn elsewhere, and thus your lands will remember its nature. Do not attempt to contact ever again. My kin may not be so understanding of your plights. Before I leave, Chris, did you enjoy my creation? One last unique experience. Pride. Goodbye. After a fade to white, the video ends. Now this is easily the best and most important episode of the series, as it really kind of ties all the loose ends together and ultimately reveals to us what the story is of this Unfiction. Now what is that story? Well, we made it. I shall finally tell you, and it will lead us into the final episode of this story. But before that, here is the story of Deltarune, as told through the experience of Ashvale Lane. Chris is an orphan who is currently being fostered by the Dreamer family. Chris connects to Toriel, their foster mother, but has a difficult time trying to connect and be friends with their foster brother, Azrael. Eventually, one day in front of the lake, Azrael lashes out at Chris, permanently rejecting them, and even asks them to stop calling him his brother. Already heartbroken, Chris eventually finds a notice at school that discusses how Toriel will be moving away, this ultimately being confirmed through a letter Chris finds in Toriel's room that is addressed to whomever will foster Chris next. With the combined heartbreak of Azrael's hate, Toriel's eventual departure, and the realization that they will be left behind and truly alone, Chris enters into a delusional state and experiences what we know as Deltarune. And through the text of episode 20, an equally sad realization is made. Everything was fake. From the Dark Worlds, Castletown, the Darkeners, Ralze, Chris's classmates, even Susie, they were all delusions crafted in Chris's mind. Eventually, and maybe even thankfully, the foundation of these delusions begin to crack. Perhaps it's because of Ash's exploration of the unused content that begins to poke these holes in the corpse of Chris's delusions. Eventually, Chris confronts a manifestation of their delusions, but ultimately spares it, and in a seeming act of thanks, the delusion finally shatters, which now leads us to our final episode, episode 21, 21_conclusion. In the real world, with the sun shining and birds chirping, Chris walks up to the vacant lot where their house used to stand. Here the sign reads, "It's a for sale sign by Navidson Realty. Remember House of Leaves and my house?" Chris then goes to call home, where interestingly we can see the call option for Susie, despite recent revelations. Calling home works, with Toriel answering. She says to Chris, "Hello, Dreamer residence." "Oh, Chris. What a lovely surprise. How is the new family treating you?" "That is wonderful to hear. I'm sorry Azrael's away at the moment, but I'm sure he'd love to talk to you soon. I hope you're doing well. You can always call. I'm just on the other side of the phone. Goodbye." After this, Chris then walks off into the trees, leaving both us and them unsure of their future. Here, the video and series ends. I think the saddest thing is that Chris doesn't have a family and doesn't even have a home, and they even lie about their whereabouts to Toriel, and, well, I think this really makes the ending kind of bittersweet in a way. And I wanted to save the description for last, as it simply and kind of funnily says, that's all I could find. Like, after all that, everything experienced, it's just, yeah, that's all the little tidbits and secrets I could find. It's like, yeah, some secrets, alright. Alright, now before I end this video, I do want to present a question. Feel free to answer if you want. What happens to Chris? Well, I have 3 ideas. So, first, Chris goes and lives a life free of delusion and ultimately gets the good ending. The second idea, I don't know. I mean, they walk off. Anything could happen. And the more sad option, which is option 3, the cycle repeating. Since Chris walks off into the woods, there's a pretty good chance that they could, start collecting twigs and various found objects and sort of begin this cycle all over again. However, I'm leaning more towards the first option, and I'm purely basing that on the fact that in the very last atom of a frame in episode 21 that's like really fucking hard to see, you can see the hallway from episode 1, except this time, the cage is open, and the being is now free. Alright, now I'm actually going off script now. I'm going to talk from the brain, from the noggin, so if you actually watched this whole series so far, I want to say big fucking thank you. This is actually the most effort I've put into any video I've made. I've been making videos for a while, but like I've removed them and stuff because they're all shit, to be honest, but I've really wanted to make a video with like actual effort put into it, like, scripting and recording and fucking editing, doing all this shit together. And I didn't know kind of like what to do exactly, and then I found this series, and I haven't seen anybody else talk about it, again, at least to my knowledge. And so, like, screw it. I want to do it. I want to create something I've watched and enjoyed many times before, of people kind of dissecting a series. And I know usually people, they just talk about what happens and they don't actually kind of theorize about it. So, I mean, I know I did a lot of kind of just summing up what happens, but I do want to make that section of what I do genuinely believe the story present is in the series. And also, as it turns out, in the episode 19, there's like a typo where it says his instead of they, and then it's in the comments of that where I found out that #Veil Lane is just like a kind of the side project of an already existing YouTuber. I forget their name right now, but I'll put it up on the screen. So, yeah, other than that, all the credits will be in the description. Actually, before I go, I'm not going to beg for you to like or to subscribe or anything, but I will beg for you to share this video around. So I'm putting a fuck ton of effort into it, so, like, just, share it around everywhere if you can. I would be eternally grateful for you. So with that being said, I'll see you another time. Goodbye.